Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it may be, and welcome to today's webinar on travel in the new normal, rethinking technology and cyber risk with our good friends over at Mastercard. Now, before we get to today's presentation and our two presenters, allow me to first introduce myself. My name is Paul Brancan, and I am the Director of Communications and External Affairs at the Pacific Asia Travel Association, and I will be your host for today. Now, before we get to our presentation, I just have one more note that I wanted to let you know about. I know many of you are familiar with Zoom, but just as a refresher, you'll see at the bottom of your browser, there are two functions, both a chat and a Q&A. For the chat, feel free to introduce yourself, say hello to other participants, where you're from, what you're doing. However, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A function as shown on your screen. Please do not submit any questions using the chat function, as when I moderate the discussion later on, it's difficult for me to toggle back between both the Q&A and chat. And with that, that is the end of all my notes, and we'll move right on to our presenters. So with us today, we have Mr. Chung Tien San. He's the Vice President of Cybersecurity, CNI, APJ at Mastercard, and Mr. Rajat Maheshwari, the Vice President of Digital Identity and Biometrics, Cyber and Intelligence Solution at Mastercard. Welcome, gentlemen, and I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you. All righty. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. My name is Tien San. I'm part of Mastercard. I look after the cybersecurity for APJ Mastercard. And probably have Rajat introduce himself as well before we just kick off.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rajat. I'm responsible for digital identity and biometrics for Mastercard.
All righty, let's start then. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening. So today is the second series of Mastercard. We are talking a little bit more about travel in the new norm. And the first series was about travel insight from Mastercard. And today we are doing a continuation of, hey, what do you need to look out for when the new norm starts coming back? And then what happens when the travel starts coming back to the norm, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the trends. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing, and then also maybe going to talk a little bit about what Mastercard is and how we can possibly also help you in understanding a little bit better about setting up your organization when it comes to digital, when it comes to cyber, what are the key things and what are some of the things that you may want to take a look into. So I have a backdrop here, right? And I wish I was talking to you guys out of a cafe in France, right? But evidently that experience is priceless right now. Sorry for the pun there, but yeah, I just wanted to start it off with regards to travel, right? So we talked a little about this the last time round, right? So you heard in our last conversation with everyone here, travel recovery is coming up. Right here, you can see some of the statistics here. I'm not going to run into them, but you know that, hey, you know, a lot of this is booming up. Business travel is coming back up. Asia is optimistic that we are travel will be returned by the end of 2021 across all Pan-Asia Pacific. We are seeing the pockets of countries being opened up as well, including where we are based out in Singapore. So we are definitely seeing travel opening up across the whole region in this year, right? What is all about this travel recovery, right? And what is shaping the new landscape? So what we're seeing from a trend perspective, right, is that as the travel industry evolves, right, we have seen, especially during this period, right, a lot of digitization has evolved in the entire travel ecosystem, right? So whether it's OTA platforms, reservation apps, payment processing systems, loyalty programs, reservations, airline bookings, restaurants, travel providers, right, and transportation providers, everything is interconnected. Everything is digitally connected, right? And what does that mean, right? Everything means that if it's digitally connected, means that there's more exposure to cyber risk across everything. It also means that something that impacts on one platform could possibly impact the rest of the platforms as well, right? So it's an entire network that is tightly connected by digital. And the moment it's tightly connected means that one risk exposes everyone. So what sort of risks are we talking about here, right? So some of these things that we can see here, right? Credential abuse, right? PII theft, right? I think Raja will talk a little bit more about PII later, right? Talk a little bit about supply chain attacks, right? So in the recent times, talk about mesh card attacks that's happening on e-commerce website, the data being stolen, right? The credit card data, passport numbers. So these are all major card attacks that has been used to actually steal data, right, from consumers of compromised websites. Phishing attacks, there are malicious emails being sent out, right, to organizations and also sent out to consumers, right? And some of these things are very, very widely seen as, hey, clicking on the link, right, kind of infected your organization or in fact your consumers' laptop as well, right? And that's where data are being stolen as well. We are also seeing quite a number of DDoS attacks. We're seeing quite a huge rise on ransomware attacks as well, right? So I think these are some of the things that you have seen quite a bit. And then these are some of the data breaches and some of the areas that we've seen that has breached over the last couple of, I would say, months and years, right? And so we can see from here, these are some of the data that has been seen. In the travel industry, there are increasingly cyber criminals focusing on this data because there's a lot of money to be made if there are attacks and from ransomware perspective. All right. So who is being exposed to this, right? And what sort of organization is being exposed to, right? So we have seen so far, right, especially the pandemic, right? There's actually a huge explosion of third party, right? What do you mean by third party? A lot of organizations, right, they kind of like use service providers to help them to ramp up digital very quickly. So for example, you outsource your application development, your website development, right? And some of these are being created by service providers, right? To be able to help you to create those websites very quickly. And because of that, there's also a lot of things being outsourced, right? So what we are talking about here is that, hey, as explosion of third-party relations has increased, it also means that the exposure, right, from a control perspective has also grown because now you're working with third parties right now, and then cyber criminals will attack anything that is connected to your organization, right? So who is it susceptible to this? Are we talking about large organizations or are we talking about only small organizations, right? Actually, we are talking about all organizations, right? Regardless whether you're large or whether you're small, right? There is no a focus at the end of the day that say that, hey, I will only want to attack large criminals. I don't want to attack small SMBs at the end of the day, right? Every organization is equally at risk, right, from being attacked, right? And today, as you can see from here, cybercrime is a 350 billion problem worldwide, right? And this has been growing exponentially, right? And SMBs why are they susceptible to a targeted attack, right? Or why, right? Because a lot of SMBs today, right, are not well prepared, right, in preparing themselves, right, for cybersecurity, from an attack perspective. A lot of times we are looking at driving the business, growing the business, and then from a cyber perspective, it's always a afterthought, right? And that's why we have been seeing quite a number of data breaches to SMBs. We have been seeing quite a number of downtimes, right? At the moment, from an organizational perspective, you are breached and there's downtime. What does it mean? It literally means business has stopped, right? And this is where we want to be able to help everyone to understand that, hey, cyber criminals and cybercrime is a consistent problem, right? It is not a big versus small, a more focused target versus a less focused target. It is not. It is a consistent problem across every kind of organization worldwide, right? I talk a little bit about this, right? What does that mean about breaches at the end of the day? Right, depending on where you are, regulatory is fine, one thing, but I think in most of us as an organization, right, financial loss in business reputation, compromise in customer data, those are the biggest impact, right, when it actually leads to financial crime, right, or any kind of cybercrime. These are the major things, right, that has been exposed from an organization perspective, right. A lot of times, customer data being exposed also means a whole downstream of issues, right, and that's where I think Roger will talk a little bit about. Why is it so important, right, to protect customer data, right? And what sort of customer data is important to be protected as well, all right? All right, so why we keep talking about, hey, there's a lot of attacks, why is it such a big problem? And then why do we still have so much attacks while we've been talking so much about it? So one of the biggest things that we have seen, right, is that, hey, there are a lot of businesses not equipped, right, to actually handle the evolving dynamics of cyber, right? One of the biggest problems that we've seen is that there's actually a lack of cybersecurity skill sets. Two, there's a whole range of cybersecurity tools out in the market. What do I do? What should I do first? How should I do it, right? There's a lot of that, what and how, right? And where should I start, right? Because it's such a broad domain, right? Should I start with application, start with data? Should I start with my mobile app, or should I start with my e-commerce website? Where should I look starting first, right? And these are all very, very right questions to ask, right? And the question is, how should we look in that cybersecurity, all right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how Mastercard can help, right? And talk a little about businesses and why these are some of the things that you may want to look into, and then where are some of the resources and some of the things that we can help you to help get a little bit more information and get a little bit more knowledge around cybersecurity. So this is what we talk about, right? In the old days and then to where we are today, right? In the early ecosystems of technology, right? It is actually very controlled, right? There isn't a lot of technology. There isn't cloud in the first place. It is probably just a email servers and then the website, and then you're just protected within your organization. As over the last 10 years, right, it's expanded the ecosystem, right? There's a lot more online coming on board. There's a lot more digital acceptance from whether it's a payment perspective or whether it's from booking perspective, that has actually evolved a lot more. Today, right, we are evolving into a huge cloud environment, right? Everything and everywhere is connected endlessly. So we keep talking about IoT, right? It's the Internet of Things, right? I term it the infinite of technology growth, right? This is expanding so quickly, so many technologies that is being come into this entire ecosystem. And then the question is, hey, how do we actually protect? What do we need to protect as the ecosystem evolve more and more, all right? So what is Mastercard doing about this, right? We are here to really deliver trust, right, to the entire connected economy, right? So we literally talk about the whole connected ecosystem, what's the ecosystem about, and why is everything so connected at the end of the day. And what we want to really talk about is really that, hey, how do you prioritize? What is the first thing to look into, right? Remember, I talk about so many things, so many tools. Where should I start? How should I focus, right? And this is where we come to help you to look at, from your organization perspective, what is important? How do you automate it? And from a priority perspective, what should you start looking into first, right? Rather than looking at everything at one go and treating that as equal priority. So why Mastercard, right? We have been there for the last 50 years, right? We have been applying our cybersecurity principles to secure our entire global network, right? Our experience, right? Securing over 18 petabytes of data, right? We do 2 billion kinds of transactions on the annual basis. From an organization perspective, we mitigate almost 3.2 million phishing attempts, right? And from a network perspective, we face and detect almost 200 attacks every minute of every day. This is our experience, right, as an organization. And because of our organization from an experience perspective to protect ourselves, now we want to be able to help our customers, our friends, right, to apply the same principles that we are going into to secure your organization as well. So what do we talk about, right? I talk a little bit about the ecosystem that we are securing, some of the solutions that we have from an organization perspective. Why Mastercard, right? A lot of the customers may not be aware, right? Mastercard is one of the founding members of PCI, right? Which is the Payment Card Industry Council, right? Organically, we have done over 1 billion cybersecurity acquisition and investments, right? To really help enforce and bring together the entire cybersecurity ecosystem for the whole connected ecosystem. In the organization perspective, right, we have former CISOs, we have law enforcement agents, right, to be able to provide the global support and also the local relevance, right, for all the cybersecurity within the region as well. So what are we talking about here, right? So what's the vision, right? One of the things that what we have done, I keep talking about, hey, do you know what to do, how to do it, right? One of the things that Mastercard has done, right? So we created the Mastercard Trust Center, right? This Trust Center, right, is a website provided to everyone in the world, every businesses in the world, to help everyone to understand cybersecurity. It is free. It is a range of technologies, resources, tools, blogs, webinars, papers, right? Basically, the entire Trust Center is really to help every businesses to lift up the cybersecurity awareness, to lift up the cybersecurity knowledge, right, for everyone, right? So the Mastercard Center, what is it about, right? It is actually a learning journey, right? Basically, we are helping customers to understand, hey, there are cybersecurity concepts, what are the different attacks, methods at the end of the day, and then how can you protect your organization? And we understand, right, for every organization, there are different levels of expertise in every organization. So Mastercard Trust Center is created in 3 different categories, right? Each of the categories is based on a different level of expertise, and then based on your expertise, right, you can select on, hey, which level should I start with, right? So we have a basic category. I say, hey, I'm a beginner, right? I start up my SMB business. I start up a website. I have some data around. I'm not sure what to do around it. How do I learn more? So I have one which is really for the beginners. Then I have one that's all right. I have an IT team, right? I may not have a cyber team. I have an IT team. I'm fairly experienced to set up my stuff, but I want to be able to understand more. I want to be able to expand my knowledge a little bit better, right? To understand on what are the unknowns, what are all the new threats coming on board, and how can I keep my organization well protected. And then the last one is basically you are a well-structured organization. You have IT team, you have a security team, and you wanted to be able to understand a little bit better to have a little bit protection beyond the curve, right? Understanding what are the new threats coming in aboard, and then how can you layer your organization a little bit better, a little bit more, right, in order to secure your organization. So those are some of the 3 different type of personas that we have on the Mastercard Trust Center. And the whole idea, right, is really to help everyone to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity and how does it apply to securing your organization. So I talked a little bit about this just now. The entire website is free for everyone, right? It has podcasts, it has videos, it has white papers, articles, toolkits, right? And it's actually created in 3 different personas, right? To help everyone to understand cyber based on what their comfort level is, all right? All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit into what is cyber, right? And how do you look at it as cybersecurity, right? How do you look at it from your organization perspective? Conceptually, it's like your house, right? It is very simple. Like, it's just looking at your house. What do I need to do to secure my home at the end of the day, right? Literally translated into the digital world, it is how you're going to secure your business. All right, I'm going to break it down a little bit, right? So think of it this way here. So from an external view perspective, from an outside in perspective, but securing the perimeter of your house, right? You take a look at this. Are the entries into your home secure? So if I have a home, I will look at my front door, my back door, my windows, my defenses, right? My fences at the end of the day. In the digital world, what does it translate into? It translates into your parameters, right? Your perimeter firewalls, your website, your software patching in your organization. Are the logs up to date, right? Are they well protected? So you translate into a digital world, it's the perimeter security. Of course, in today's world, we have on-premise and then we have cloud as well, right? But basically, this is all perimeter defenses around your organization. So anything that is your asset, that is your perimeter, how do you protect it, right? And then you take a look a little bit more about, all right, so now I know where to protect, my perimeters need to be protected. How do I protect them? So in your home, you look at hardening all your entry points, your deadbolts, your doorknob locks, your digital locks, etc. Right? So those are all the equipment that you want to use, right, to harden the entry, to make it a little bit more difficult, right, for intruders, right, to break into your organization. Similarly, right, into all your assets that's external facing, whether they are websites, whether they are e-commerce websites, are they just a browsing website? So anything that is used for your consumers, anything for somebody to browse, anything that is used for maybe your vendors to access, are they secure? What do I mean by that? Are they encrypted? Are the data encrypted? Have you validated the logs? Have they been proven, right? Are those secured technologies that you're using to secure your organization? Then coming back into, all right, who else gets access to my house? Who are the service providers that can come into my house, right? So take, for example, the aircon repairman, right? The service guy who actually servicing my fridge or servicing my washing machine, right? These are all service providers, right? As an organization, from a technology perspective, I have a lot of service providers, right? I have cloud service provider, I have a SaaS provider, I host my entire application out into a service provider. So going back into a digital world, are they secure? What is their track record? Have they been breached before? Have they done a test in their organization before, right? And how do you trust them? How do you trust that these providers are secure and they will not be the ones that have a problem that leaks into your organization? right? So this is what we talk about third-party risk management, right? So conceptually, it's very, very easy, right? How do you protect your house? Look at it from a digital perspective. How do you protect your digital assets, right? I dive a little bit into service providers, right? Because in the recent months, we have been seeing quite a number of attacks, what we call supply chain attacks, right? And that's basically all your third parties. Anybody that you work with, that is, you have outsourced or you have made a contract for somebody to provide a service to you, a technology to you, or a business to you, right? How secure are they? Do you know? Are they somebody that you can trust so that they will not breach that security of the trust that you're giving to them, right? So third-party risk, understanding your organization, understanding your service provider is ultimately very important, right? And then how do you do that as a first step? Inventories, right? Basically, inventory your entire third party, inventory all the service providers that you have, and understand what sort of relationship you have with them. And from there, you can make an assessment and say that, hey, are they secure? Are they not secure? How do I know, right? So we always have this saying, right? Trust but verify. If you trust your service provider, sure, verify them as well and make sure that they are secure as well. All right. Now I'm going to move a little bit into internal security, right? How do you actually manage your organization inside your organization, right? So in your house, in your rooms, right? You probably have rooms, you have doors, you have locks, you have safes, right? And what do you do with them, right? Basically, they're there to protect your crown jewels, your assets. What are those assets? They could be customer data, it could be IP, right? They could be pricing, it could be your strategy, right? Anything that is within of your crown assets is something that you want to protect, right? And a lot of times, these are all data to be protected at the end of the day, right? And then what do you do to protect them, right? Before you put a safe, maybe you have a lock and then you have a door and then you have multiple doors or multiple locks in those rooms that you're protecting your assets, right? Like a vault, right? So looking back into your internal organization, it could be your data security. How do you protect your data, right? Are you encrypting your data? Are you, what are tripwires do you have around the data? How are you protecting the people who are trying to source your data, right? Who have access to those data, right? Those are very, very, very fundamentals into, all right, these are my crown jewels, I need to protect them. So what are we talking about here? Basically, we're saying identify your assets, identify what is important to you from an asset perspective. And then once you have that visibility, all right, this is how I'm going to protect them. And then we talk a little bit about house rules. Who do you let in to your organization, right? Somebody knock on the door. How do you know this is somebody that is trusted, right? If it's is it somebody who is just a stranger and then maybe pretending to be somebody else, right? Knocking on the door. Does he produce an ID and is the ID genuine or non-genuine, right? So those are all fundamentals of teaching somebody of how do you respond to when a stranger knocks in your door, right? And from a cyber perspective, from a digital perspective, it's simply identity. How do you prove that identity is real, right? And just as that, they must have policy, you must have processes, right? And you also must be able to train, right, your organization, your staff, right, to not allow and not respond to anybody that sends an email to them, or anybody who clicks, or anybody who just presents an email and say, click on this link, right? So those are all fundamental cyber awareness training, like, hey, don't click on phishing emails. This is strange, do not touch on that, right? What is the process to basically say that, hey, if this is a phishing email, what should I do with it? So this is where the policy and processes comes in, right? So this is where all the house rules comes in, right? And then the final last one I talk about is, all right, so what happens if I'm breached? What do I do, right? In the real world, I call the police. I say, hey, I have an incident. Somebody broke into my house, right? Please come and investigate, right? Similarly, in the digital world, what is your process in the event that you are breached? Touch wood, but what are the things that you need to do? What is your incident response? What is your crisis response? How do you respond internally? How do you respond externally? Like, who are the things that you need to, who are the people that you need to inform, right? What are your backup process at the end of the day? So how do you actually contain the crisis, right? So those are some things that from an internal perspective, just some of the things that you may want to look into, right? Understanding your assets, right? Creating a policy to understand the house rules at the end of the day, right? And educating everybody in the house not to open doors to strangers at the end of the day, right? And then finally, in the event there's a breach, right, call somebody, right? Who do you call? And what is your SOP in those events, right? So I'm going to summarize this, right? So I talk a little bit about from the outside in and from the inside out, right? From an outside in perspective, monitor everything that goes into your organization, right? From an external perspective, understand all the assets that you have, all the doors, all the windows, all the rooftops, all the fences, right? That is actually facing excise, right? Understand where they are, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about the inside out part, right? And understand the risk at the end of the day, right? Understand the increasing your employee awareness, increasing the resilience, right, of your organization cybersecurity, right? Be able to be prepared for attacks, right? And be able to receive expert advice as well, right? So I'm going to touch a little bit last part about the identify and mitigate, right? So I talk a little bit about users. I talk a lot about understanding who knocks on the door, right? Are they legitimate? Why are they not legitimate? Why is it so important, right? And I'm going to hand over to my friend here, Rajat, and who's going to walk through with you about identity and how identity plays a very important role in the digital world. All right, Rajat, over to you.
Thanks, TS. Well, good morning, good evening, depending on from where you are joining us for this webinar. I should probably start by thanking Paul and other colleagues from PATA for organizing this, and TS for an amazing overview on cybersecurity. I will try and live up to the expectations what TS has set in the earlier part of this session. So I'm going to take you all in the world of trust and digital ID. And the obvious question comes to your mind is, what Mastercard is doing in this space and how ID can help in enabling safe travel. Let me start with trust and why it is so important for digital identity. A good definition of trust, I would say, is somebody said that it's a confident relationship with the unknown. And you know, in the digital world, there are more unknowns. Still, the organizations offering digital services and the people they are interacting with need to be confident in their interactions. For this to work, trust has to be the heart of the system. So digital identity is about establishing that confidence and trust at both ends of the interaction. Each party needs to be confident at the other end, and both require trust in the system that mediates the interaction. A good example of this would be, let's assume a person is traveling from Brazil to Thailand. I know travel is a luxury these days, but let's assume Brazil to Thailand and wishes to buy something at a shopping mall. Now, the person should be confident that the Mastercard issued in Brazil is going to work in Thailand and the payment will be processed. And at the same time, the merchant who is going to render the services is confident that this card is genuine and will receive the payment for the services rendered. This is the trust in system they have, and this is offered by our payment network, the two overlapping circles, what you see on this screen, the Mastercard logo. Whenever the merchant or a consumer or the user sees this logos, they have the trust in the system. They have confidence that this relationship, this transaction is going to work. Next page, please. Let me talk about the ID network model, or how we have the vision, how we have envisioned the digital identity network. If you see these four roles, users, relying party, trust providers, and identity verification providers, these roles always existed in the ecosystems. These users are common people like us who wants to prove the identity to relying parties for rendering a particular service. The way it is done today is mostly we are manually uploading the documents or sharing the documents issued by identity providers like government issued passport or citizen cards, or state government issuing driver's license, university degrees issued from your from the university, etc. So these actors already existed. What we have done is given those actors some additional responsibilities and capabilities to help them to perform those transactions in digital world and with trust. IVPs, so identity verification providers, are very, very good in verifying information from identity documents. They can vouch if the information is presented by an individual using the medium of a document is correct or not. They can confirm that this passport, which belongs to Rajat Maheshwari, is issued by Indian government and has following details about date of birth and address, is correct. These IVPs are mostly entities issuing the ID documents. So passport is issued by governments, citizen card is issued by government. It can be your degree or certificates, whether you're a doctor or you have done MBA or you're engineering graduate, which can be confirmed from your university degrees. And it can be your driver's license authorities issuing the driver's license. So IVP role can be played by any of these entities. From the beginning, when we started looking into digital identity, one thing was very clear for us, that it has to be user-centric. We were always talking about a user-centric model, which means the user should have the control of identity data. They should consent where and how their identity data is going to be used. And for that control, they should be able to keep their identity data somewhere safe. So where is that safe place? Can this be in your laptop bag or in user's pocket? Definitely not. Well, the answer is lies in the fact that what most of us carry in our hand. It's the mobile device. Close to 5 billion people today at least have one mobile device with them. And this device to keep identity data can be a good solution, at least for the next 5 years. I mean, you never know. The technology is evolving so much. It can change, but a mobile is pretty good place to start with. And this mobile device is all about apps and operating system. And we thought about the idea of an app. Do we have any app which is already part of this and well placed to play the role of trust providers? So I think the answer was yes. I mean, we took the example of banks. Many banks have apps and they are well placed to play the role of trust providers. They already have an existing relationship with the users and interacting them on daily, weekly, or monthly basis. They have met the regulatory requirements and done KYC on those users who are interacting with them. So these roles will vary, and this can change from market to market. Even MNOs are a good candidate to play this role of trust providers. So we spoke about users, we spoke about relying parties. Relying parties are essentially the entities which intend to validate somebody's credentials before offering a particular service. We spoke about trust providers and we spoke about IVPs. Now, who is going to play the role of connecting these actors together and bringing them on the network? And we thought we can play the role of orchestration, defining the rules on what will be shared and how it will be shared, the liability and assurance framework, and a business model around this. So for example, if a dollar is coming from a relying party, then how it's going to benefit the identity verification providers, the trust providers, and the network for the work they have done in enabling this ecosystem. Next page, please. So I think I just spoke about the roles of different entities. It's about the flexibility and the scalability they offer. And I'm not going to spend much time on this. So let's move to the next slide. So these were the guiding principles what we had in mind when we started looking into defining how the identity network should look like, or how digital identity should look like. Mastercard has published a paper back in 2019 on building the trust and digital world. And the message we wanted to again give that the individual should only share the information relevant to accessing the product or services, and really not oversharing the information to the relying parties. Ownership, so individuals should own their data, their identity, their personal data. Inclusion is essentially about everyone has a right to have identity or digital identity. It should be simple so that people from different age group can access, can use that. The confidentiality should be there, where the information should not be should be kept private. And the most important piece for this design was consent, and individual identity should not be used or shared without their explicit consent or as permitted by laws. Transparency, that individuals should have the right to understand. They should be able to see how their data is being used, which relying parties have used the data, what amount of data has been used. For example, if if a relying party is interested in knowing for an age restricted cell whether an individual is above 18 or above 21 or not, they don't need to see your date of birth. What they want to know is whether that individual is above 21 or not. So those transparency should be there. Security and integrity, it's about the identity data and transactions that involves individual digital identity should be held with the highest standard, and TS has covered well on that what standards we follow, we maintain, how we are securing our networks. The rights about the data, individuals should have access, to delete their identity information, and it's our duty to protect and make sure that the rights are not violated. It should have fair use, and users should have also the choice to select the trusted digital identity provider, which solution they want to work, whether they want to switch from one TP to other TP. You can refer to this paper, which can be found online. Later, we are going to share the link also through which you can download this paper. Next page, please. Okay, so 3 core components for safe and seamless travel. Proof that the traveler is who they claim to be. We definitely have a medium for that. In today's world, we show passport, which is essentially the key for international travel. And this already exists, though it's not in digital form. Still, it's pretty much in physical form where the way we use this, but the medium is there. The next important thing for traveling in today's world is of course your health certificates, proof that the health data, vaccination test, it is genuine, it's recognized, and in the format which can be accepted by different users. And I mean the attributes can be endless, like the brand of vaccine, the first shot, second shot, dates, booster test, any pre-arrival test done or not. So all this should be part of the health certificates. And the most critical piece of this journey is the certification or the validation of those. The certificate validation. Which means that how do we validate this is genuine? And I mean, for example, I know where I can get a COVID test done in Singapore and which certificates are valid and what I'm going to get out of that. But are those certificates good if I'm traveling to Thailand? How a country will recognize the labs around the globe? The trust which we spoke earlier is must for such an ecosystem to work. Also, the requirements are so fluid for travelers because of the COVID situation. Countries are changing the stand almost every day, whether travelers from country A are allowed or not. If allowed, then whether they are going to serve the quarantine or not. If quarantine, then how many days? What is the frequency of tests during quarantine? Any pre-arrival test required or not? How to validate the results? And this validation will heavily depend on the travel itinerary of an individual, from which country that the individual is traveling. So definitely the certification validation is key behind this complete ecosystem. Next page, please. This is the, I mean, I would say the ideal scenario or an ideal example of a seamless journey or seamless travel. I'm not going to speak much on this slide, but I'm going to talk about my travel experience. I am a very frequent traveler, and I have not traveled much in past 2 years, except one trip from my journey, which was from New Delhi to Singapore. I was coming back to Singapore. I will just give you an example that what kind of documents I was carrying. I mean, so I was traveling in a family of 3, me, my wife, and my son. And we had one pre-arrival COVID test certificate, which was supposed to be done within 72 hours of our travel commencement. If we have taken any vaccine dose, the document to certify that, your passport, your resident card. There was an additional government approval which was required to travel during that time. So that document, overall, I had a bunch of close to 30 documents which I was carrying in paper forms or in document format when I entered or tried entering the counter. And just imagine how many times those documents were checked. I almost got that bundle of documents checked 10 times. From the time I started, I mean, from the moment I would say tried entering the airport at the security gate itself, they asked me to show my passport and they wanted to make sure that I have tested for COVID or have done pre-COVID test results. Then I went to the airline check-in counter and they also validated all my documents that to make sure that I am allowed to travel. I am allowed to take the journey to Singapore. At the customs, at the immigrations, I was checked all those documents again. I walked down to the lounge and lounge also wanted to check my documents. And finally, there was a check before even before I boarded the flight. After landing in Singapore, again, they were checking the documents before I go to immigration. So at the disembarkation point, they were checking the documents, all the documents, and also at the immigration. And finally, when I checked in the hotel for quarantine, they also checked my documents again, almost 10 times. And the most important piece was like these documents, because when they were checking the documents in Delhi and then the individual is traveling to some other country or coming to Singapore, if there is any discrepancies, let's say Singapore says that, oh, this guy was not supposed to travel. How did you allow for him to travel? Because the COVID test document, it should be 72 hours before and you have sent him, you have not checked that. So to manage the dispute resolution, and this is the most beautiful part, to manage the dispute resolution, before I boarded the flight, the person was, the airline person was taking the pictures of my document. And he said that, don't worry, it will be deleted within 24 hours once you land in Singapore and once they confirm that you are taken in Singapore and not deported back. So this is the way travel looks like in today's world. And I will not blame anybody for this. The situation is so fluid that nobody can control what is happening. Of course, a digital identity can underpins a friction-free, scalable, and trustable mechanism for sharing identity, health, and travel data digitally, reducing the need for multiple documents and subsequently verifying the authenticity of the documents and their ownership. Imagine this page is self-explanatory. It can be so easy if once I have my documents validated and I have it digitally with me on my device, I can use them almost for anything and everything, whatever possible use cases are there for commencing a travel journey. Next page, please. So I will quickly cover a couple of points. So health data, as part of when we designed the ID network back in 2017, none of us thought about COVID and not even in our weirdest dream. But thankfully, the way we designed or way we were trying to build the ID ecosystem based on the concepts of consumer-centric design, reusability, it was easy for us to expand the ecosystem and to include health-related attributes. And for the trust source in our ecosystem, Health Pass Manager or the app are best placed to take up that role. The dynamic nature of such attributes are key here, and the situation, as I said, it's so fluid right now that the rules are changing every other day. One day you can enter into a country without serving quarantine and pre-test, and next day you are required to get yourself tested within 24 hours before commencing your journey. So I will again repeat the same message that this is so critical to have this ecosystem in place to be able to come back, to bring back the consumers to travel again and to travel happily and to travel safely. Next page, please. I think that's it for me as well. I will pass this on to back to Paul.
Sorry there. Oh, well, thank you very much, Rajat, and thank you very much, Tien. So it was a fantastic presentation. We do have a question here, but I'll start off with a question on myself, from myself first. And I want to remind anybody, if you have any questions for our speakers, please do drop them in the Q&A and not in the chat, as I have a lot going on my screen, so it's hard for me to toggle back and forth. So on my first question regarding cybersecurity, we know that there's a shortage of cybersecurity skill sets, and therefore many businesses and organizations may not have the expertise to understand their cybersecurity risks. So how can they navigate that? Especially now with the pandemic, and of course resources are cut across the board. So what would your suggestion be in that regard?
Right. Let me take that. All right. So great question, right? Good question, Paul. So I think this is definitely very real, right? About the lack of cybersecurity skill sets, and then what do we do? How do you actually navigate it? I think this is where we bring back into the conversation of the Mastercard Trust Center, right? And also some of the understanding of the fundamentals of what do you even need to look out for when you get onto the digital bandwagon, and what are the fundamentals that you need to look out into to understand the cybersecurity risks. I think one of the easiest ways that we have seen organizations do is that, hey, when you actually have an agreement, or when you are when you're outsourcing some of the application to your service providers, right? Ask the fundamentals. What are the security around these applications that you're developing for me? From if you are putting it in a data center, you're putting it on a service provider, right? Understand what are the security measures that they have. Do you have certifications? What are the soft certifications that you have, right? And those are all the, just trying to understand on, hey, what are some of the risks that you could actually understand a little bit better, and what are the track records from a safety record perspective, right? It's very similar to how we travel at the end of the day, understanding the risks at the end of the day, right? So having the fundamentals to learn using the Mastercard Trust Center is one way to really know the right questions to ask. And then, of course, happy to speak with anybody who wants to understand a little bit better. And then we can also help to identify those risks, and then maybe bring you along the way and then guide you along on your journey towards cybersecurity. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
Well, this leads to the question that was actually dropped here in the Q&A. So, I mean, from I guess one of our attendees, what is a recommended percentage of turnover to spend on cybersecurity protection annually?
Great question. This is definitely a question that we've been seeing quite a bit. I'm going to answer this question, Roger. Okay, so usually what we always look at, right, is what is the percentage of cybersecurity to IT spend, right? And then there's a question of what's the percentage of IT spend to your company's turnover, right? So usually that's how the train of thought goes into. The reason why the train of thought goes in along that line is because a lot of cybersecurity are all around the IT organizations that you have, right? So which is why when you buy IT or when you procure IT and when you bring things into that, how much of that is actually spent on cyber, right? Then of course there are other things that is cyber that is not necessarily IT related, for example, compliance, for example, governance, etc., right? And those are over and beyond that. So what we have seen normally, right, from a percentage perspective, is that we have seen that most organizations spend about 10% of their turnover for IT budgets, right? So that's usually what we've seen so far. And what we have also seen is from a security budget perspective, we see somewhere between 7 to 15% of the IT budget. Right, so thereabouts. So thereabouts is what we're seeing in the industry. Having said that, it is not a one size fits all. Depending on the industry that you are in, whether you are financial, you are retail, you are manufacturing, etc., that changes slightly, but it all hovers around that range. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry, my daughter just walked into the room here. So I'm going to go to this question about digital identity. So any examples from the public sector or private sector on seamless travel experience? My apologies, you can hear my daughter just in the background.
No.
But yes. So, but yeah, any examples, when we talk about digital identity, any examples do you have from the public sector or private sector on seamless travel experience?
Yeah, no, Paul, it's a very good question indeed. And see, the thing is, as I was speaking during the presentation earlier, that collaboration is key for achieving this vision and a globally interoperable ID It's not the problem about the technology. I don't think so. Technology is that complicated, but it's more about people collaborating, the businesses coming together and try to achieve this vision. So yes, I have seen few examples. I think IATA is working in. I mean, they have announced their travel pass, so they are of course active in this space, and they are trying to do things to enable safe travel. I am aware of a couple of governments working in this direction. Singapore government has done few things I mean, I don't know when they will do this for travel, but they have already started integrating the health certificates in the identity attribute store so that you can securely and safely transact using those health attributes and share those attributes with relying parties. Also, I mean, if you talk about airports, I think in India they have started a program called DG Yatra, which is more about I mean, helping you during your. I mean, I just explained the journey, what I had, the experience I had, and this is about you. Once register, you create your ID locally at the airport, so you verify your identity documents and you register your face, and then they have kiosk installed all over the airport, so you can walk in to check-in counter, drop your baggage with your face. They're going to identify you are registered for this journey, and the boarding pass will be issued. You can walk into the lounge and you can walk into the boarding gate or plane without physically showing any document. Your face will be your identity throughout your journey in the airport. And probably they wish to expand this program and connect different airports in India to bring them together to make this journey seamless for users. So I'm sure there are many such initiatives going on in US and in many of the Asian countries, and we'll see soon these coming to life.
I mean, just going along that lines, I just wanted to, you talked about, protecting your digital identity, but, how does like an airport like in India, right? You went through your example. How are they reassuring like the customers about, their digital identity is safe? I mean, I would imagine there would be some hesitancy especially from those who, I mean, I would have a bit of hesitancy about that. What are they doing to reassure that customer, or how do you reassure that customer that yes, their digital identity is safe?
Yeah, so I think I will partially answer this question, and I'll also pass it on to TS. It's his domain as well. But yes, I mean, Paul, I'll answer this question from top. So basically, there are two models. The way we approach to digital identity is more of a decentralized model where we want user-centric model. The user has control over identity attributes. While many of the countries, including India, what they have done is it's more a centralized stored model where all the identity attributes for an individual is stored. I mean, you see the Aadhaar program, it's the biggest identity network in this world. They have close to 1 billion citizens data. And yes, so it's finding that right balance. I think most of the governments, they are going in the direction of having a centralized database, and then the question comes that how to secure that, how they are trying to secure this. So yes, the hesitation is there, but I think once people are comfortable using that, I mean, when India started with Aadhaar, there has been reports about the data being leaked or it's being sold on dark web. Even the things went to Supreme Court, and there was a temporary hold for some time, but it got sorted out, and then I think now people are getting or they are confident about performing these transactions. But yes, I would not. I will be wrong if I say that people are very confident doing these transactions. So that hesitancy is still there. I will pass it on to TS. TS, your views on this?
Yeah, great question. So I think just to add on to that, right? So I think like all crown jewels that I talk about, right? About data, about information. I'm protecting this and protecting this data at the end of the day. We always talk about it's not. There's three things. There are three things we always talk about, right? Confidentiality of the data, who is supposed to access the data, integrity of the data, that the data of is not being compromised at the end of the day, and then availability of data, right? So in the cyber, well, we always talk about the triage of these three components whenever we protect anything at the end of the day. Having said that, that it comes into the other components of just not the technology itself to protect the data like this, right? We always talk about process, people, process, technology, right? The people that is actually who has access to the data, the process of how do you actually get access to the data, right? And then finally, the portion about the technology to actually protect the data, right? So these all things plays in tandem at the end of the day, and especially if where all the digital IDs, the digital identities, and all these certifications are almost becoming the crown jewel of me when I travel, right? and that I will hope that most organizations and who are actually handling these data are looking at it at a technology level, and also looking at the people and the process of that level, so that they can actually apply the CIA, right, the confidentiality, integrity, availability concept, right, to these crown jewels as well.
We're almost out of time, but I do want to get to this. We do have one more question that was just dropped here, and I do want to get to it. It's a great question. So what advice do you have for SME travel businesses wanting to pivot online to cyber protect themselves in the current climate where revenue has been impacted?
I think it's a great question, right? Regards to pivoting online to cyber protect yourself in the event that the revenue has been impacted. I think from anything that goes online perspective, right? We generally will always advise customers to invest in some of this, to invest in cybersecurity upfront, especially because you're also investing your organization to go online as well, right? So, like I mentioned before, having the right answers, or maybe not the right answers, but having the right questions to the service providers who are helping you to to help you to pivot online, understanding some of the basics about cybersecurity risks, and asking the right questions on their track record and their security measures to help you to bring your services online securely, right? One of the things that we have been trying to lift the entire C-level, right, of cybersecurity awareness, right, so that everybody who is on this entire C, right, has their cybersecurity level raised, right? It's also working with service providers, right? That when we provide a service to somebody, that service has to be secure. Customers have to trust your platform, right? So that they will feel secure when they go online with you. So, and of course, we always say that trust but verify, right? So if you trust your service provider to help you to go online, be able to help to verify. We can help you in that and help you to maybe give a visibility on, all right, what is their track record? How has it been so far? So those cyber risks, understanding their risk portfolio also helps you to make a better decision on, hey, what are the secure service providers that you may want to work with? I hope that answers the question in an odd sense of sort.
No, it does. I mean, just reiterating the fact, that this idea of trust and making sure that you have information on hand and asking the questions that need to be asked before you implement any kind of online platform, and making sure your data is safe. So thank you very much for that answer, and thank you very much for taking the time with us today. Very, very informative. We're just out of time. We're at the top of the hour. So thank you so much, Tien, and thank you very much, Rajat.
Absolutely, pleasure of ours.
It's always a pleasure to work with our friends at Mastercard. So thank you so much. I'll let you guys go, and I'll do a quick wrap up here.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care. Okay. Oops, 1 second. Just get my screen up here. So once again, thank you to our good friends at Mastercard. Thank you, Tien Sen and Rajat. If you enjoyed this webinar, I do want to inform you about an upcoming webinar we have next Tuesday. And it is our PATA Visitor Forecast Updates, Recovery Paths for Asia. You'll hear from our good friends at HKPU, Euromonitor, Forward Keys, TCI Research, and STR. This is a webinar that should not be missed. So it's 3 p.m. Bangkok time. So if you're in Singapore, that would be 4 p.m. Singapore time. My colleague will put the link to register in the chat. Of course, this is free for members. If you are a non-member, or a chapter member or youth, you can join, but there is a small fee. So if you happen to be here and you're not a member, these are the advantages of becoming a member. So please, inquire today about how you can become a member. I also want to just make you aware of an event we have coming up next month. This is our virtual PATA Wellness and Luxury Travel Conference in March from October 20th to the 22nd. This is a one-day conference and a one-day mart. So if you're in the wellness or luxury space, you're a buyer or a seller, register today. I think the deadlines for sellers and buyers has come up soon because, of course, we do have to do some scheduling of appointments. But of course, you also register as a visitor to join us for the one-day conference. So that's a bit of what's coming up. If you have any questions about today's webinar or about the upcoming webinars or events, feel free to email me. That's paul@pata.org. Or if you want to just find more information about PATA, the webinars, the events, and anything upcoming, any other activities we're doing, feel free to visit our website at www.pata.org. I would like to mention, if you want to also keep updated, you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Sign up for our newsletter. You can also see all of our previous webinars on, not all of them, but most of them on our PATA YouTube channel. And if you like what you see there, please do like and subscribe. And with that, once again, I would like to thank our good friends over at Mastercard. I'd like to thank, as always, our members, life members, partners, chapter members for the continued support of the association. And last and certainly not least, thank you all of you for joining us this afternoon. I will hopefully see you next Tuesday. Take care, stay safe, and have a good day.